the Muffin here. Welcome back. Have another really fun subscriber request. We're going to put the T1 Heavy Tier 5 OP American Heavy Tank against 13 Tier 1s, and we're going to see who can out T1 the other. Which one will stand to be the winner? Now, we do some balancing changes through this. If it ends up being too easy for one side or another, we'll either upgrade all the T1 tanks to Tier 2 tanks, or if it ends up being too easy for the other team, then we'll end up upgrading to 2 T1 heavy tanks and kind of change it up. And thank you so much for those that participated, helped. Had a subscriber that sent in this replay, did some free cam work through it, which was really awesome. Sounds like he has some special cool sound effects also added too. And also thank you, Garion, so much for editing the parts after this replay. And if any of you guys want to help with any of the rooms we do, join the Discord, get the movie crew roll, and love to see you guys in one of our in our rooms. So we have a bunch of Tier 1s trying to do everything they can. You can see as they aim in on this T1 Heavy, it is very, very red. There are a couple places where the T1 tanks can penetrate. Unfortunately, none of the Tier 1 tanks have premium ammunition. They do, if you get it completely flat, there is, I believe, an area between the tracks and the upper part of the completely flat side of the tank that may be able to penetrate, or the rear of the tank is really the only areas a Tier 1 tank can penetrate the T1 Heavy. So this one, you can just see, is really rough for these Tier 1 tanks. Anytime that the T1 Heavy got itself backed up in a corner or like, the Tier 1 tanks just did not stand a chance. They are able to drain a bit of the T1 Heavy's hit points. You can't see it with the battle markers removed. The T1 Heavy, I believe, got down to about half of its hit points. I think it had, about half of its hit points. They're doing everything they can, able to get some shots just right off that back weak part of the T1 Heavy. And we can say that one was pretty rough. So we're now gonna up it to 12 Tier 2 tanks versus 2 T1 Heavy tanks. Tier 2s obviously having a little bit more penetration, more going for them. I believe if we would have just done one T1 Heavy tank against 13 Tier 2s, that the Tier 2s could have easily won, being that the Tier 1 tanks were able to get the T1 Heavy down to about half of its hit points. Tier 2's trying to be as careful as they can, not trying to get in front of the T1 Heavies. T1's doing some pretty smart moves here with using HE rounds on these lower tier tanks. Very easy to penetrate. Where these 2 tier tanks have absolutely no armor against this T1 Heavy, having to use more of their maneuverability is really going to be key here. Tier 2 is able to do a little bit more damage to the T1 Heavies, still needing to either get to the rear or the sides. And that's really the only chance they're going to have. T1 heavy tank is probably one of the weirdest shooting tanks in my opinion. For some reason, when shooting in first-person view, I know I've said this before in my previous videos, but it always seems like when I'm shooting in the T1 heavy tank aimed in, that the shell exits from like off to the side rather than straight through where your aimer's pointing. It's kind of weird. These tier 2 tanks trying to do everything they can to get behind. Able to get some of these T1 heavy tanks down quite low on hit points. So we'll need to do some balancing changes. The next one being that the T1 heavies look like they're going to be able to win this one. Only 2 tier 2s left. We're now going to upgrade all of the tier 2s to now tier 3s against 2 T1 heavies and see what the outcome is. So got them both pretty low on hit points. And it was really smart because a lot of the people choosing tier 3 tanks, choosing tank destroyers, they have the reputation of having the best cannons in the game. And a lot of these players realizing that needing that as much penetration as possible to get through that heavy T1's armor is going to be really crucial. Now I'd say fairly smart for these T1 heavy tanks going more town. Just a little bit more protection, being able to use the buildings. Going out on flank could leave themselves a bit more exposed. Very smart position here from Garion. Being able to use this T1 heavy in front of him. So he's kind of spotting a lot of the enemies, while he's kind of a little bit in back using this rock, both trying to use their armor the best they can. Fortunately, this T1 heavy in front of him just looks like he is just getting deleted. And there is still a lot of tier 3s to go through. So I can tell you right now, we are going to now increase the number of T1 heavies. We're now going to do 3 T1 heavies versus 11 tier 3s next as the last round and see how that turns out. Man, just look at that. Such a sight of hopelessness when you're the T1 heavy in that situation. All right, here we go. 3 T1 heavies. Can they do it against 11 tier 3s? Some already taking their first shots, it looks like. Going out fairly wide here. Maybe a little bit too far. Oh, there we go. Ooh. So pretty good being able that all T1 heavies are in this area. It's fairly open just beyond these buildings. There's a little bit of open area. If they can keep the sides protected, they may be able to hold them off. T1 heavy over on the right-hand side looks like he's having a real hard time. Great shot there. One T1 heavy down. And not any of the tier 3s down yet. This one still looks like a very tough one. And here they come charging in. Is that a Kenny Otsu? That thing has an insane DPM. I think it's got like the same DPM as some tier 7 or 8 tanks do. Wow. Okay, well definitely a bit challenging for the T1 heavy tanks. So we were able to, it was kind of fun to test and experiment, see what worked, what didn't. Thank you so much to all those that helped. Hope you guys enjoyed the vid. This is the Muffin here. You guys stay cool and keep tanking.